Julian Morrissey hadn't touched his bed in almost 30 hours. Instead, he drifted like a phantom through the Montecito bungalow that had been transformed into the heart of his ever's creative operations. The floor-to-ceiling windows revealed nothing but a black coastal sky, and the only sound came from the endless clicking of his worn keyboard and the soft humming of the air purifier someone had insisted on for brand synergy. He paused near the espresso machine, his third. Doppio still untouched. It had gone cold 2 hours ago. His eyes moved to the giant whiteboard that had become his obsession. Written across it in pastel-colored marker was the phrase, "Controlled Intimacy," underlined twice, circled once, and bracketed by post-it notes scribbled with phrases like slow luxury, motherhood glow, and purposeful silence. That phrase, controlled intimacy, wasn't just copy. It was the soul of the brand. And tomorrow's restock would be the test. Julian had joined the company 5 months earlier, after walking out of a fast-paced wellness startup in San Francisco. Back then, he'd been proud of the churn rate and the viral campaigns. But this was personal in ways he didn't understand until he saw Meghan's initial product, concept, hand-poured candles labeled only with fragments of poetry, bath oil sealed with wax and thread, and the elusive mother's morning mist that sold out in under 20 minutes during the soft launch. Now, the restock was set to go live at exactly 7:30 a.m. with preloaded influencer mentions rolling out in minute-by-minute succession. Everything had to feel accidental. Nothing could look strategic. That was the paradox of modern authenticity, and Julian had spent days rehearsing the illusion. Across the hallway, Samuel Keyes sat cross-legged on a velvet ottoman, staring at his MacBook screen. The promotional video soft fades of ocean waves, dried florals, and voiceover clips from Meghan herself was nearly finished. He had adjusted the filter twice already, trying to get the sunlight in one shot to match the candle's undertones. He knew no one would notice. That didn't matter. He would. He stood and stretched, hearing a click in his back. Then he stepped out onto the patio for air, the California night brushing against his face. From there, he could see Julian pacing, backlit by screen glow. Julian didn't notice. He was too deep in his second spreadsheet, analyzing scroll heat maps and click-drop funnels. At 3:17 a.m., Julian finally spoke, more to the room than to anyone in it. He mentioned a potential glitch in the Shopify plugin that could delay the mobile site load time by 4 seconds. 4 seconds. In his mind, that was enough for a brand death. So he picked up his phone and called Martin Bishop, the brand's overlooked but indispensable CTO. Martin was already awake. He had been tweaking code on his tablet from his kitchen table, his son's plastic dinosaur balancing on the corner of the screen. When the phone rang, he knew. Julian only called when it mattered. Martin adjusted the server cache while sipping cold peppermint tea. He reassured Julian that load speeds were now down to 2.8 seconds, even with projected traffic spikes. Then he took a deep breath and opened his browser to test the site again. The as-ever homepage loaded with a serene blush background and a blinking countdown. 3 hours, 12 minutes. By 4:45 a.m., the office had shifted from anxious silence to mechanical focus. Samuel lit a cedarwood candle and started rendering the final video export. Martin stayed on call, monitoring back-end performance in real time. Julian had stopped pacing, but only because he'd collapsed onto the sofa, scrolling through Slack messages with deadpan eyes. And just before the sun began to bleed faintly, through the window panes, a final message arrived in the group thread. All preloads queued, no bugs, ready to go. Julian looked up from his phone. Then he stood, walked over to the espresso machine, and made one last cup. This one he would drink. By the time the digital clock struck 7:30 a.m., Julian Morrissey was already sitting upright on the edge of the modular sofa, fingers hovering over his laptop keyboard like a pianist waiting for his cue. The room had shifted in tone, no longer thick with tension, now buzzing with contained urgency. A dozen browser tabs blinked open across 3 screens: Shopify, Klaviyo, Google Analytics, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. The rollout was about to begin, and there would be no second attempt. Across the city, Martin Bishop had returned from walking his dog and was back in front of his triple monitor setup, earbuds in, chewing on the end of a pencil. He had warned them early that morning traffic could be unpredictable. Bot traffic, real traffic, server pressure. Every possible outcome had been modeled, but no amount of modeling would replace the thrill or dread of a live launch. He toggled between tabs, watching heat maps and ping responses, waiting for the servers to breathe under pressure. And then it began. The first ping hit at 7:31 a.m. A customer from Toronto checked out with 2 Mother's Morning, mists, and a linen sleep wrap. Seconds later, another purchase from Austin, then London, then Doha. The purchase flow ignited like brush fire. Julian leaned forward, brows drawn tight, watching inventory counters drop. 10% gone, then 15, then 20-4. He leaned over to grab his phone and tapped into the group. Slack.Sam had already beaten him to it. The message blinked onto the screen. In real time, 20% gone in 4 minutes. Traffic up 12x? Julian didn't respond. He simply exhaled long and silent and then typed one word, push. That was the cue. The influencer clips, pre-approved and captioned in lowercase minimalism, began posting on Instagram and TikTok. In perfect synchrony. A lifestyle blogger in Paris lit the hearth and halo candle while pouring oat milk into a ceramic mug. A New York-based model stood barefoot by a windowsill, spritzing the mist into morning light with soft piano music. Behind her, none of it looked forced. That was the point. Meanwhile, Martin toggled between server logs and the side chat with Shopify support. He noticed a few 502 errors from overseas proxies, but quickly adjusted the load balancer. The site held steady. The metrics soared. 60% of stock was now gone in less than 9 minutes. It was not just successful. It was dangerous. Julian stood up. He didn't even realize he had until the cold air touched his ankles. He walked slowly toward the window and stared out into the brightening sky. For months, people had whispered that As Ever was just another vanity project, a celebrity side hustle in a market already bloated with luxury linen and mood lighting. But this wasn't just moving product, it was creating urgency, community, identity. At 7:46 a.m., the site hit full saturation. 3,000 checkouts in under 20 minutes. The sold-out badge appeared across every product page. Sam, still monitoring video engagement from his corner desk, blinked hard and refreshed the TikTok analytics. One clip had already crossed 82,000 views. Another had been reposted by a micro-celebrity in Berlin. Then came the phone call. Julian recognized the number instantly, Luca Candle, a supply chain strategist they'd hired as a consultant back when the brand was still finding its voice. Luca rarely called. When he did, it meant something was either breaking or breaking records. Julian answered and barely got a word in. Luca was already talking, voice sharp, asking if they'd prepared a contingency for limited restocks, suggesting they delay the next run to cultivate exclusivity. Julian didn't argue. He just nodded, listening, half-focused on the checkout map that now resembled a fireworks display. Red dots, blinking, expanding. Back at his desk, Martin leaned back in his chair and sipped the now lukewarm peppermint tea. He glanced at the server load one last time. Stable. He let out a low breath, rubbed his eyes, and let his body sink into the seat. Sam sat still, watching a live reaction video just posted by an influencer in Cape Town. She was crying, genuinely, saying how this was the first thing that had made her feel cared for in weeks. Julian read the comments section in silence. Then he stood again and walked toward the kitchen. He wasn't hungry, but he needed to feel the ordinary. And as the kettle whirred to life behind him, he realized something simple and strange. They hadn't just sold a product, they had created belief. By noon, the media inbox was flooded. Julian Morrissey had just returned from a 20-minute walk, hoping to let his mind settle, but when he opened his laptop again, he found nearly 100 new requests lined up: press inquiries, podcast invitations, brand collaborations, and a handful of veiled criticism disguised as curiosity. He scrolled through them in silence, tapping his fingers on the wooden edge of the desk. Something felt off, too loud, too fast. He clicked on one subject line that read, "Meghan's Mystery Mist, Beautiful or Dangerous?" The article was, Liv, a beauty columnist, had raised questions about the lack of ingredient transparency. Julian knew the ingredients were FDA compliant, clean, sourced with care. But they weren't printed on the bottle, they had been placed on a QR-linked minimalist info page, part of the brand's intentional design flow. That decision, made weeks ago after an internal debate, was now being dissected on Twitter threads and niche beauty forums. He stood and called Samuel over. Sam was halfway through his second energy drink and looked like someone who had been awake for 3 nights straight. Julian turned the laptop toward him. Sam read the headline, squinted, and then began searching for the author's Twitter handle. Across the city, Martin Bishop was on a Zoom call with Shopify support when he saw the Google alert pop up on the corner of his screen. He muted his mic, clicked it open, and frowned. Another tweet. This one showed a screen grab of the sold-out product page with a caption that read, "So this is feminism now? A $78 candle in a recycled box?" The tweet already had 6,000 likes and growing. Martin copied the link and dropped it into the internal channel marked Narrative Response. They had a plan for moments like this, a slow, deliberate approach. No reaction tweets. No public clarifications unless absolutely necessary. Let it simmer, then redirect. Julian agreed, but he also knew something else was at play. The backlash wasn't just about ingredients or price. It was about the feeling that the brand's intimacy might have crossed a line into performance. That somewhere in the soft edits and handwritten notes, people had sensed something too curated, too strategic. Like authenticity itself had become another product to sell. He sat back and reread the comment section on the Cape Town influencer's post. At first, it had been glowing, but now new replies had begun to creep in. One user asked if the crying was real or rehearsed. Another called it marketing manipulation. A third accused the brand of exploiting softness as a status symbol. Julian rubbed his temples. He didn't blame them. He had spent months crafting the exact emotional response the brand was now receiving. But this wasn't a story you could keep clean. Not when the face of the company was Meghan Markle, and every product came wrapped in public history. Sam started drafting a soft response post, an Instagram story that would show behind the scenes. Footage of the candle-making process, raw and unfiltered. No music, no voiceover. Just hands pouring wax, stitching the labels, writing notes. Something real. Something to slow things down. Meanwhile, Martin sent over a server snapshot and back-end analytics. Despite the noise, return rates were almost non-existent. Customer feedback on direct channels remained overwhelmingly positive. Most of the backlash was from outside the buyer base. Observers, not owners. Julian looked over the data and then closed his laptop gently. He stood and walked into the product storage room. It was empty now. Shelves that had been neatly stacked with boxes the night before were barren. Only the faint scent of lavender and sandalwood